Hello and welcome to a brand new series of our podcast, Owl and Fells, Norwich City Football Club. We meet again. We're back for a second series, Fowl. How are you feeling?
We've got a second series. I'm over the moon about it.
I know, it's the best thing about that promotion
It
last
is.
season, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is it. It would have been a struggle just talking about the three teams that came up and the three teams that went down. If we hadn't gone up, obviously we made it. We're back in the big time. Excited about it, and obviously all the riches and glory, it will surely come our way.
And all those hundreds of thousands of new listeners we're surely going to attract to this podcast purely because Norwich are a Premier League club now.
Absolutely.
And we all know what the Premier League is. It's the biggest and best league in the world, isn't it, Phil?
Exactly. This is it. It's absolutely massive.
I guess just a recap. I'm sure our loyal fan base will be sticking by us and following us again this season. But also, obviously, for the extra 650 million of those new listeners, a little bit about ourselves. Basically, we're a podcast all about Norwich City. So our focus is we look at the history between Norwich and our upcoming opponents. So this year it will be our upcoming Premier League opponents. And we look back at any big games, any historic moments, any club firsts, any player connections, any trends, quirks or key talking points, anything that's really happened between ourselves and our opponents. We just talk Norwich City, don't we, Phil?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, obviously it's always great fun talking about Norwich. It's great fun talking about football, and that's what we're here to do. So we're looking forward to it. Another season. Any
chance we're going to get some guests on this season? No, we're Premier League.
I've had a lot of maybes. No definites. I texted Mario. He was well up for it until he signed for Stoke, and as it happens, he couldn't make it tonight. It was a wet and miserable night on a Thursday, so obviously that's his prime Stoke territory time. So he can't make it down. Tetty was well up for it. But he's gone to Norway.
Yeah.
And Ollie Burton is liable to walk past my house at any moment. So if he does, I'll grab him.
We were saying, weren't we, he'd be good for the Newcastle episode.
Yeah.
Book him up for that. That'd be a good start.
Absolutely.
But we'll keep trying, won't we, Phil? We'll keep knocking on doors.
Yeah.
Pressing the flesh.
100%.
And seeing where our contacts can take us.
This is exactly. Apparently, Stuart Webber was spotted in knot cuts today. So for the next episode, I'm going to hang out there for a while.
And has Ollie Skip been spotted around Holston at all? Normally the rumours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's no Ollie Skip, unfortunately. And is he going to come back? What are you thinking?
No.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I guess this is a good opportunity to, just before we get into episode 1, to gauge your thoughts and your expectations for the upcoming season in terms of how the squad's looking and how are you feeling at the moment?
I mean, obviously I like to hang out on Twitter quite a lot with my fellow Norwich buddies, and the overall mood is quite pessimistic actually. I'm not sure I fully am on board with the pessimism. I think there's a few differences from last time we're in the Premier League. The players we have got that bit of experience now. Sorry, the players we've still got from that campaign. I actually also personally believe that Ben Gibson is a better defender than Ben Godfrey. Certainly, Ben Gibson now is better than Ben Godfrey was when we had him in the Premier League. In terms of defending, not as a footballer, I mean, Ben Godfrey is going to be a great centre-back and is a fantastic footballer. But actually, as a pure defender, I'm happy enough for Gibson, actually. Giannoulis rate a lot as well. The big hole, though, is obviously lack of Emi Buendia. And it's just hard to see how we're going to replace him. So I do share a little bit of pessimism there. It's very hard to guess what we're going to do. Because last time we were up, we were inexperienced and had huge injury problems. Which I think is an entirely fair enough excuse, particularly through the spine of that team. But this season, you've got to say, at the moment, we're looking a defensive midfielder short, in my opinion. We're looking centre-back, at least cover short, or a Big Andy. He's obviously looking more and more the part every game, and he's got a huge future ahead of him. It just depends if we get in. I mean, it's just hard, isn't it? I honestly don't know. I would say erring on the pessimistic side at the moment. Where are you at with it?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same, actually. I'm feeling slightly pessimistic, and I think a lot of that's been shaped by my optimism last time round.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we both agreed when we came up a couple of years ago. I really thought that the way we were playing, we were ready-made for Premier League football.
Yeah.
And I thought we were going to have an excellent season, and to have the worst season in the club's history in many aspects was such a reality check and such a blow that it's very difficult to get that out of your mind going into this season. Undoubtedly, I think certainly the squad in some aspects are better.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, Ben Gibson. The players have also had that extra years. They've had a year of Premier League experience now, which could go a long way. You worry about the goals, I think, and that's what defines a club in the Premier League, isn't it?
Exactly.
You can be an average side, but if you've got a man who can put 15, 20 in the back of the net, you're going to stay up.
Yeah. Exactly. And at the same time, like, you can be a good side, but if you don't get the ball in the back of the net, and often enough, it's going to be a problem. I'm still happy with Pukki. I think Pukki's the man still. But I would also add into the problem is when he gets injured. I felt last time, and I actually felt over the Euros as well, last time in the Premier League, he looked like the second half of the season, he looked like he was carrying an injury. And because of our relatively thin squad size, we didn't really have anything on to replace him. We've obviously had Drimich there, he was also injured a lot, Drimich, as well. So that was kind of the problem. So Pukki worries me if he gets injured. The club seem keen on Adamida, although there was talk this week about Armstrong coming in and Adamida going out on loan, but I think that's been widely dismissed by the Pinkin journalists who know their stuff.
Yeah.
So and from what I can make out from the journalists in the know, they seem to think that Adamida is well liked by the club. I mean, goals might be a problem, and creating the chances. You take Emi Buendia at that side, and you've lost 20 assists and 15 goals, haven't you, basically, from last season?
And I think that's, like you said earlier, I think that's the big issue, or that's the element of uncertainty now, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of what impact that's going to have
100%
on the squad. Some of the signings we've made, they're generally unproven. We don't quite know how it's going to work out. I think Grant Hanley's really kicked on. I felt he looked good in the Premier League last time round when he was fit, which wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I think if him and Gibson can stay fit and Aaron's is still at the club, then I'd feel like we've got the foundations there.
Yeah.
To be a bit tighter at the back. But I'm gonna agree with you, Phil. I'm on the slightly pessimistic step at the moment.
The only thing I would say is that Rashika's coming, hasn't he? Also from Werder Bremen. And my mate Ross, who is an Aston Villa fan, obviously was delighted and gave me a bit of bants when Emi Buendia moved over. But then about 3 or 4 days later, however long it was when we signed Rashika, Ross was back on him and was, he's amazing. We were trying to sign him last year. And when that fell through, that's when we moved on to Buendia. So hopefully those are good signs of what we got. So, we'll see what happens. But it's just hard, isn't it? We don't really know.
Let's see. It's going to be the cliched roller coaster ride, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly will be.
And that brings us on to episode 1. Who knows where we're going to start on the roller coaster, because it's an absolute cracker to open up with. It's one of the biggest, most famous football teams in world football, not just in England. Yeah, check this out, Phil. 19 titles, 6 European Cups, 7 FA Cups. I haven't even dug out how many League Cups there are in the mix as well. But it's of course it's Liverpool. It's games like this that every club wants to be in the Premier League, isn't it? These are the real iconic fixtures that you look out for. And I mean, it is a bit different for us as we've experienced top flight football on a good few occasions.
Yeah.
But imagine if you're like a Bournemouth first coming into the Premier League a few years ago, this is the game that really hits home, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think that every season, no matter how good or bad you are, every newly promoted side seems to get one over on one of the big boys at some point. If you think about every season we've been in the Premier League in the last 10 years, or even go back to 2004-05 season, was it? We beat Man U that season. Like, we've beaten one of the big boys every season, and first game of the season, that's a free hit, isn't it? As they say, at home as well.
Exactly, and it's a bit of symmetry here, isn't it? Because obviously what we do on this podcast, we tend to look back at the last time that we played these clubs. It's going to be a bit tougher this time round, Phil, because obviously the last time we played, all all these Premier League clubs was in that dismal season 2 years ago. But obviously, we opened up that Premier League campaign against Liverpool, didn't we? This time it was away.
Yep.
They were European champions, weren't they, at the time? And I remember the pink and journos just saying what an experience it was, what an occasion it felt like being at Anfield that evening to kick off the Premier League campaign. How did you feel that game went? And do you think that was an early indication that, well, we need to adapt our playing style? We were a little bit gung-ho at times, weren't we? And we got ripped through in that first half almost at ease.
Yeah, it's a tough one because even 2 years on, I'm still sort of like analysing that game in my head almost more than any other Premier League game that season, because there's so many ways of looking at it. I mean, in the first half, and we had talked about this before, in the first half, it just felt like every time they got on the ball, they were going to score, didn't it? They were like terrifying. But having said that, their goals kind of came from nothing, almost like the first one as a Grant Hanley own goal. I mean, it wasn't great for him, but it was just one of those things. It can happen. I know Van Dijk scored from a header from a corner, didn't he? And it was like, over
Lewis.
And Lewis isn't actually a small guy either, but it was just such an imbalance, that wasn't it? So for all their kind of good play, you think nice two of those goals there we could have probably done more with. So from that point of view, I'm thinking, well, okay, one of those games, get that away, first game of the season. But in the second half, though, we caused them a number of problems going forward. And there's the argument which Danny Baker made on Twitter that Liverpool took their foot off the gas. Probably not unreasonably, but also, the way we got forward, we caused them some problems. We scored a very good goal, a lovely little slide ball through from Emi Buendia into Pukki. I actually felt going on from that game, we carried on playing that way, which was our best. It turned out to be our best period of the season. We got a number of good results, a few good results in the following weeks, didn't we? So I don't actually think the way we played was a problem. In my opinion, the problem we had is that we didn't carry on playing that way. We almost lost confidence in it, and we started trying to force it more. We started I thought towards the end of the season, particularly after lockdown, we looked under pressure on the ball. We were looking to move it on quickly. We weren't, we were hassled on the ball, and we weren't actually like the Man City game, which obviously you'll talk about in next podcast. But we actually in that game we were so confident on the ball, we're happy to hold on to it and happy to take their press on. Yeah, where it felt like towards the end of the season we were just shot, mentally.
It's a good point that you make. I think confidence is a big thing for the way we play, isn't it? It's because our game's built around players being comfortable on the ball and wanting the ball,
exactly,
and moving the ball. And being able to take the ball in tight, difficult situations. Yeah. And I think you're right. That Liverpool game was bizarre for me because I remember at half time having real mixed emotions in that I was quite pleased with the way we played and thought we created chances in that first half, but worried also at being 4-0 down and what this could turn into.
Yeah, exactly that.
Do you think the sense of occasion and the noise and the momentum that Liverpool had, I know it's the first game of the season, but momentum from the Champions League final impacted our squad or our starting 11?
I think it would be strange if it didn't. I remember Grant Holt talking about Anfield as the best atmosphere he's ever experienced, like the biggest, almost most intimidating. So it is a classic old school stadium, isn't it? It's sort of fans right by the pitch. Yeah. It's not like West Ham where now the fans are a long way back. It's proper in like Colosseum, really. And so that's great. So I'm sure that it would have affected them. I'd also think it affected Liverpool in that actually felt they rode that wave for a good half the season. And by the time we played them the second game, I actually thought they were a shadow of the team we played first game up.
And I think in a game like that and an occasion like that against a team like that, I think that own goal was quite early in the game, and that was crucial. I think we were quite confident. We started that game quite well. If we could have seen out the first 20, 25, it's 0-0. It's that old cliche, isn't it? You quieten the crowd. Yeah. That's the away side.
Exactly.
Also, our confidence would grow because we created a few chances. And if we're 0-0, then who knows where... Well, I was going to say who knows where that game would have gone. It probably would have still ended up in a similar score. But... yeah, it's ifs and buts, isn't it?
Exactly.
Fine lines in football.
Exactly that. And small margins. That's the nail has been well and truly hammered there. That the Premier League is full of those moments where they are fine margins. Even like the season in 05 where last game of the season we went into that not being in the bottom three, but obviously came out of it 6-0 down later. But you think to yourself, there's another game that season we nicked a 2-1 or something rather than a 1-1 draw.
Yeah,
and we'd have probably been all right. It is that close when it at the bottom.
You mentioned earlier the turn game at Carrow Road, which was very, very different, wasn't it? So this was actually the last time I went to Carrow Road, believe it or not, which seems incredible now.
Yeah.
If we're getting a bit of deja vu, we did a little test podcast on the mobile phone in the walnut tree.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
It was the inception of this journey we were on. Yeah.
It was a few beers and a mobile phone on record, wasn't it? In those days.
On location.
Yeah, so we did actually do Liverpool as a dummy run. And then also we did record this episode a week or so ago and had a few technical issues.
Yeah, this is the remake, isn't it?
It is. So we've talked a lot about Liverpool.
We have.
Recently. Now, I don't know if you also remember, it's a very stormy evening. Well, it was a night game. There's a really strong wind blowing around Carrow Road.
Yep.
And I think we both felt underwhelmed by Liverpool, didn't we? What we were expecting. We just felt, although they were obviously on top the whole game, and whether it was related to the weather or the form they were in at the time, but it did feel like they sort of won, but weren't particularly playing well.
That's exactly how I saw it. To be honest with you, by that point of the season, I was kind of over the Liverpool hype a little bit. I really didn't think they were looking that great. And they went on, it might have been a game or 2 games later, to lose 3-0 away at Watford. They then lost, also to Roma, didn't they? They went on a sort of a series of quite average results, and they kind of, in the end, I wouldn't say crawled over the line. That's doing them a disservice. But they didn't sort of smash the league maybe like they thought they were going to. But yeah, so I was underwhelmed by them. I thought Salah looked pretty ordinary. It wasn't really until Mane came on did I really think they're causing us problems, really.
Yeah.
The flip side of the coin is that we didn't really cause them too much either.
Byron got injured that game, didn't he?
That's right, yeah. And it's not really featured since, has he? Which is a real shame for him, because I actually rate him. I think it's a really handy little player. And one of those cliches that, it's going to be like a new signing when he's back, but I have a sad feeling for him.
If he comes back.
Exactly. I've got a sad feeling. I really rate him. I thought he was excellent. Like Man City at home, I thought he was brilliant. And he's a genuinely really good defender. He maybe doesn't offer quite as much going forward as like Max or Giannoulis will, but as a defender, he's top quality. But I've got a funny feeling his career might be going the same way as Matt Jarvis.
And I think him coming off in that game obviously impacted the team. He was, he was a big part of our back four at that time.
Yeah.
And I think Mane scored in about the 80th minute.
It was later on, wasn't it? Yeah.
A real bit of a poacher's goal. I think a little tactical elbow into Simmons' back, wasn't there? And gave him that yard of space, and he put it away. And Liverpool, they did what champions do. They ground out a 1-0 win when things weren't really going their way, and they did what they had to do, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. As we've done on a few occasions over our 2 championship-winning seasons, you just have to find a way when things aren't going well for you. Having said that, Van Dijk, I would say that game, so elegant. For a big centre-half, he just glided around so elegantly and just looked so in control. And he did look like he was playing about 3 or 4 levels below his level, to be fair. The rest of everyone else looked fairly competitive on the pitch, but Van Dijk was just, next level. Yeah, 100%, yeah.
You could tell what a good player he was, as I can never remember him having to sprint.
Exactly.
He just
glided, didn't he?
Yeah, interception and always in the right place at the right time. Yeah, and it's no coincidence that their season that they had last year was nothing in comparison to the one before, and Van Dijk missed most of it, didn't he, last year?
Yeah, and that's it. And when we talk about the last season in the Premier League and how bad it was, we did have a number of injuries, and like if Liverpool are going to struggle missing one or two players like Henderson and particularly Van Dijk, I mean, we had like 13 or 14 players out at one time. We never really
Yeah.
had sort of two centre backs fit for 95% of the season. It's going to be a problem for it. It's going to be a problem for any team, but particularly for a team of our size, club of our size.
Right, Phil, it's your favourite part of the podcast now.
Nap time.
We're gonna go back into the dark and distant past that we tend to do on these episodes, and we're gonna look at a few cup shocks. The first one took place in the FA Cup in 1909, and it was our first ever trip to Anfield. We were in the Southern League at the time, so a non-league club. They were top flight, no surprise. I think they'd recently been champions. And would you believe it? We only went and beat them 3-2. Yeah, a massive giant killing there.
Yep.
One of the club's founders, Arthur Turner, was part of our management team on that day. So that shows you how far back that was. And then 1936-37, Liverpool's first trip to Norfolk. Not such a big gap this time. They were Division 1, we were Division 2. So only one league below them, and we beat them convincingly, actually, 3-0. And then the last one, 1950-51, Liverpool had been champions 4 years earlier. They had a side full of internationals. We were knocking around in Division 3 South.
Yeah.
And we beat them again. I don't know the score this time, Phil. You'd think I would have looked it up after the last recording.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I'll let you off because I've not looked it up either.
Let you down there. So, yeah, 3 shocks. I think that first one takes some beating, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's an incredible gap. I mean, obviously, football back then was I wasn't really around to see it. It wasn't like it is today where, like, even teams playing each other in the same league is considered a massive shock if one beats the other. But still, I mean, that's like literally just like. We talked about this, didn't we? That was like Luton beating Norwich is the example we came up with. But it is like that. It was like literally a non-league side beating Liverpool, which now is just unthinkable. Particularly back then when they probably only had 13 or 14 pros on the books. It wasn't like they rotated the youth or the B side in. That would have been pretty much when they played. You chucked out your full strength team at every game, didn't you?
And also, it would have taken them 2 days to get up there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I don't think there'd have been no, no plush hotels or anything. Would there? Probably, get your boots on the coach or the horse and cart or whatever they used back in those days.
We would have to navigate the canals from the fens, wouldn't we? On the canal lines, steamboat, whatever they had. Yeah,
and imagine what it's like for these players. I mean, Southern League. I imagine it's the first time they experienced anything quite like that because obviously the north of England was the footballing heartland at the time, and that's where all the big clubs were based and the successful clubs. So I can't imagine how those players felt walking out at Anfield on that day.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, it must have been, almost indescribable to them, especially because where were we playing? Was that Nest days, or was it even pre-Nest?
Good question. Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. It would have been borderline, I think. Probably very early Nest days.
Yeah, so it would have been, but even still, it would have been a stadium you don't come up against in the Southern Leagues back then. So yeah, I mean, it must have been some experience, mustn't it?
Yeah. So hats off to the Arthur Turner generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the league, afraid of some heavy beatings.
Yeah, I know that one.
In those early days.
Oh, even back then. Okay.
Early days, and latter days too. Our first meeting came in the old second division, which to think of Liverpool in the second division sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, big time.
We lost. It was 1960-61, and they beat us 2-1. We actually finished 4th, and Liverpool finished 3rd, so neither of us went up. But that kind of shows there wasn't, a great deal between the two sides, one place. So we were pretty much on a par with them. And then I think I put this to you last time round. They went up the next season, and obviously they went on this pathway of football domination. And I was saying to you, that's a bit of a sliding doors moment, Fal, isn't it? Like in 60-61, we both pretty much finished in the same place, and then our two clubs went on very different paths.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, isn't it? I mean there's a lot of sliding door moments we could point at. I mean, I personally think probably a 92-93 season is probably a bigger sliding door moment. Liverpool, obviously, a big urban area, which traditionally is where football's played. There's a lot of people, a lot of
Yeah,
clubs in the area. I'm not sure if we'd swapped places then, whether if history would have worked out much different to what it is now. Personally, I don't honestly know. I mean,
yeah.
who knows is the truth of it, but I don't think it would have done. I mean, they've got such a big area, a lot of people, a lot of industry around there back then, which is where the sort of football's played around.
And big gates and that's what drove the money for transfers, wasn't
Exactly,
it?
and that's it. This is it. I mean, big. It was pretty much, I would assume, your only source of income back then, as opposed to now,
Yeah,
where literally the people, us poor sods in the stand, are literally the least important now, regrettably. But like
yeah.
back then, that was the most important, is getting fans in. So they are a big club. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not for me. I'd have said the early '90s is the biggest sliding door moment.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think also it's not a true comparison. We were, even though we were competitive with them back in 60, 61, obviously they had won championships before then and cups before then. We were still very much on a pathway of developing as a club and trying to progress. And I think you're right. I think if we'd have gone up the season after and they hadn't, I don't think our history would be much different than it is at the moment. And likewise with them, I think they probably would have gone up eventually and still would have dominated English football. But you never know, do
You
you?
never know.
So
We just need a DeLorean,
could
and
have been us.
yeah, we need a DeLorean and a sports almanac, whatever it is, and we'll have a go at finding out.
So that season that they went up, 1961-62, we've talked about this a few times actually. So they beat us 5-4 at Anfield, but Terry Alcott got a hat trick for us that day,
Yeah.
the second highest scorer in the club's history. And we were saying, imagine getting a hat trick at Anfield. Would you be happy despite the loss? Is it personal achievement versus the team result?
Yeah.
How would you feel in the changing room, Fal?
100% delighted. I'd be wandering around with a ball on my arm. Well, that's got he had a bad at the back, didn't he? I mean, I did my job. It is a tough one. In all
Yeah,
seriousness, like I remember, back in my hockey days, sometimes if we won 5 or 6-0, I had quite an easy day out. And as a centre back, I'd be like, well, I couldn't get too excited about it. Like I didn't really do that much in the
yeah,
game. Whereas sometimes you'd lose sort of like 2-1, something like that. But I might have had a really good game, and I'd be like, well, I can't be too disappointed. I've done well. And I
yeah,
think a hat trick at Anfield has got. I mean, obviously they want to win. I get that. But when he's got a hat
yeah,
trick at Anfield, that he personally could not have done any more. So yeah, I think
yeah.
bittersweet. He'll be delighted with it, but a little bit like hat trick and lost. That's how does that work?
Yeah, it'd be great to ask the question to him, as only he knows.
Yeah,
We're speculating, aren't we? I would imagine strikers aren't they pretty greedy or pretty selfish by definition? I would imagine you're going to be buzzing
I think so.
after that.
And the best ones certainly are, aren't they? It's all about goals.
And I think we mentioned this previously, but I think obviously it depends on a lot on what that result means to the club. So if it's an end of season game where you have to get something as you're in the depths of a relegation
Yeah,
battle, that puts a different perspective on it. Whereas if we're mid table and there's not a lot riding on it, then you're going to be more happy with your personal achievement compared to the team result.
yeah, 100% that. Yeah, definitely. If it's like that game gets you over the line for the title, or that game keeps you up, and you lose 5-4, you're going to be gutted, whatever you've done in the game.
Yeah,
But, like I say, if it's a difference between 8th and 9th, you're probably not going to care that much.
we were also speculating how many opposition players have scored a hat trick at Anfield. Quite an elite group, isn't it? I'd imagine.
Yeah, and lost. That's the next thing. Is that how many opposition? That must be vanishingly small. I mean, I reckon Terry Alcott would probably be in League of All of Zone there. Yeah, I mean, you don't get many hat tricks by opposition teams at Anfield, and quite an achievement.
And talking of 5-4s, Val, bring back any memories?
Yeah, so a funny game really. Naismith's home debut, if it wasn't his debut.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was his debut. I can't actually remember 100% though.
I think you're right.
And I'm going to chuck out my first moment of controversy this series in that I thought Naismith was a good player. The problems with Naismith, in my opinion, was that he injury record. every time he got into the side and started nailing down a position, he'd then go off with a niggle for like 5 or 6 weeks. Kind of then need another couple of games to get back, gets back into it, start looking good, then get
Yeah,
injured again. That was Naismith's problem for me. But in terms of finishing, I would the other problem I think he probably a position we didn't necessarily need strengthening in. I thought we needed a proper centre forward rather than like a number 10 sort of stuff
yeah.
like that. In terms of finishing, I thought it was the best at the club. I thought it was a lethal finisher given half a chance, as he proved that day.
And exactly, I remember his goal that I think put us 3-1 up
Yeah,
was a great finish, shot across the keeper into the bottom
yeah,
corner.
razor sharp.
Yeah, so 3-1 up, cruising, and then it all turns, doesn't it? And I think they were leading going into injury time, and then he pops up with an equaliser for us.
Yeah, Sebastian Bassong. I remember that vividly because I remember chucking Sebastian Bassong up front, and my words to the chaps beside me in my little season ticket area was like, "Why are they doing that? What's the point? What's the point in chucking him up front? You're gonna get absolutely no change out of the Liverpool defence chucking him up front, and what's he gonna do?" Well, it turns out what he's going to do is volley in a worldie from like 20 yards out. Well, not quite a worldie, but top. I mean, he won't have scored many goals better. I would actually stick my neck out and say I doubt Sebastian Deson scored any goals better than that. It was a quality 20-yard finish.
Injury time. So
yeah, pandemonium broke out as we snatched the last-minute equaliser, only for Adam Lallana to then ruin it all for us.
And Jurgen Klopp's first visit to Carrow Road was a memorable one,
And
wasn't
unfortunately resulted in the break of his glasses, didn't it? In the flooding of the pitch, which fair enough. I'd have done the same. A few Norwich fans got offended by that, but I think it's fair enough, isn't it? We'd absolutely do and have done the same. When we scored last-minute winners.
Yeah.
In pitch invasion time, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of want to see that, don't you? Whether it's the opposition or not, because you want to see that passion in the game, don't you?
Exactly that.
No, in my opinion, I think you agreed. I think Alex Neil and Norwich that season never really recovered from that loss. It happened in February. We were playing quite well, certainly in parts of that game and prior to that. But I think the season really turned from there on, whether it just took the wind out of their sails. I just felt that was kind of it for Alex Neil.
Yeah.
And for his Norwich side that season.
I'd agree with that, yeah. I felt like the final nail in the coffin. I thought there's very much 2 turning points that season, Newcastle away being one of them. And this was the second one where actually, it did feel like a big moment, that game. I remember coming out of that thinking, we're in trouble. And it just felt, the way it sort of took the wind out of our sails, that was a real blow, that game.
And then another relegation a few years earlier, I wanted to just mention a massive game. They were chasing the title that season. I think it was 3 or 4 games from the end. Neil Adams' first home game, so the last throw of the dice with Chrissy Hooton going. Now, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the timing of that, because Adams came in with 5 games to go, and 4 of those were against Chelsea, Liverpool, Man U and Arsenal, and the other was a 6-pointer against Fulham. Do you think that was a strange time to bring a new man in with that run of games coming up?
Yeah, basically, I did. I don't. I mean, I couldn't really see the logic in it. I wasn't the world's biggest Chris Hughton fan, but I probably wasn't the world's greatest critic like somewhere as well. I thought that was strange timing. I didn't know what he was expected to do. I didn't know whether the board almost wrote off the season thinking, okay, we'll get rid of Hughton and we'll get Neil in now, so he's got a full season to know. A full off season to know what he's working with. But what chance did he have? I mean, it was Fulham was really. If we'd have won Fulham, it'd have given us half a chance, but you couldn't really see points coming anywhere else, could you?
Yeah.
So I didn't see the point in it. I remember the game well because that was the game after Liverpool beat, I think, Chelsea at home. And
yes, that's
it
right.
was when it was when Stephen Gerrard got the troops and rallied them and was like, that's it. We go again. Yeah, that's the huddle. And sort of like, go again next week. Don't let it slip against Norwich. And as a Norwich fan watching that, I was thinking, we're in trouble. Was it 3-2 that game? It
was a strange game, actually. They scored quite early. I think Sterling scored.
He scored a cracker, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a Sunday lunchtime game, which I don't particularly enjoy.
That was Man City, wasn't it? Sorry, Liverpool played. Because then they went on to... It was in the famous slip against Chelsea, wasn't it?
Yeah, obviously, Luis Suarez scored in that game.
Shock.
So yeah, 12 goals in 6 games against us. He's got back-to-back hat-tricks. He scores 4 at Anfield, and it became a bit of a running joke, didn't it, at the time? We were saying that a lot of those 12 goals were really good goals as well, weren't they? It wasn't like half of them were 1 yard out, sticking it in the net with your big toe. It was some proper strikes within there, wasn't it?
I mean, he's so unlikable, but he is such a talented player, isn't he? He is so good. And yeah, the goals he scored like away at Anfield, like I think when he scored 4 at Anfield, and like 3 of them were just unbelievable. Like one where he chipped it over Ryan Bennett's head and then volleyed it in. Also another one where like he's like 40 yards out on the volley, and Ryan Bennett's like, "Go and have a go then," and he sort of like smashes it top bins, and then like. What can you do? And yeah, that's it. I remember like wasn't that game Neil Adams in charge? I think it was a previous one at Carrow Road where he scored a hat trick, and he chipped one in from about the halfway line roughly. A really top quality finish, but I didn't even think that was his best goal that day. I thought there's one in the first half where he smashed it in from a really tight angle, absolutely just arrowed it in the bottom corner. He must have literally had like a quarter of a football's width to aim at, and instinctively just smashed it in. Venom, accuracy, power. There was a period, and it might have been over the course of that game, where he was, over a calendar year, was the leading goal scorer at Carrow Road.
I can believe that.
And that was obviously the second place is Grant Holt. So, what can you say? Pure world class.
Well done for you in best stat of Series 2 so far. But I've got a few stats up my sleeve now. Okay. So this is probably more for our younger listeners, if we have any. But there has been some good times versus the Reds. And I'll go for a few now and give you a few stats that will surprise you, I think, even though you've heard these before. The first league win at Anfield came in 1975. Martin Peters was on the score sheet that day. And also, Ted McDougall scored the winner. I think it was a last-minute winner at Anfield, which is always great. And that was Norwich's 100th top-flight goal. And I did a bit of digging around. So where do you think our current top-flight goal tally sits now?
Well, obviously, this is not the first time I recorded this podcast. I do remember, but in honesty, I said about 1,000, and it is something like 1,116, isn't it? Something like that.
That's good enough. That's good memory skills there. Yeah, 1,198.
Okay.
We've come a long way since that day in 1975.
Yeah.
Now, see if you can remember this one. Of all our seasons in the top flight, which was our best in terms of number of goals we scored?
That I don't remember. Our best actual season. So it wasn't 92-93, was it? I do know that much. It wasn't the season afterwards where we went down, was it?
You're correct and you're wrong.
Oh, we didn't go down.
93-94, which I'm wearing the away top from that season.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
By coincidence. We got 65 that season, and Chris Sutton got 25 of them, which was some achievement. Now, I mentioned Ted McDougall earlier. He obviously got the winner back in 75, and he is still to date the only Norwich City player to win the top flight Golden Boot, which is some achievement. Sutton, despite getting 25 in the 93-94 season, that wasn't enough for him to get the Golden Boot. The 1980s were a golden period for us, so a couple of stats for you. We had one loss in 8 between 1987 and 1990.
Right.
I must admit, I'm not sure how many of those were wins, but one defeat in 8 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, we'll take that now.
And then there was another stat that was even more impressive. We only conceded 1 goal in 6 games against Liverpool.
Yeah,
in that period.
Incredible. I mean,
it is, isn't it? It's the second time you've heard that now, but it still
resonates.
Leaves you a bit speechless.
It's just unthinkable now, isn't it? I mean, we'd be happy to get through 45 minutes without conceding a goal now, not alone 6 entire games. That's already, incredible.
Is that a sign of how the top division has become less competitive, would you say? Because what we need to point out here is that this was a Liverpool side that was winning titles. It wasn't a Liverpool side that was struggling or in transition. So these stats are being achieved against the best side in the country over that period.
Yep.
And it shows that what a good side we were as well, doesn't it?
Yes to all those points. It's interesting, obviously, talking about like Jack Grealish's transfer to this week, and Villa fans are saying, "Well, this is ridiculous. The league's uncompetitive, and like Man City are essentially cheating." It's like, well, that's been going on for 15, 20 years now, and it has taken the fun out of it a little bit because, well, the early 90s, basically when the Premier League started, was probably the last time it was it was as competitive. You did generally feel you could beat anyone in the league, and I remember being like a small kid at school with my mate Tom, who was a Liverpool fan, and you wouldn't know who's going to win the game. Every time Liverpool came to Carrow Road, you would believe you got a chance of winning them, which sadly isn't the case now. But we talked about this before. You get an existential crisis if you start going down this route.
That's it. We're never going to achieve that stat again. That's the sad thing.
No, that's it.
Like,
but also the flip side to that coin. I remember the 92-93 season. Considering we nearly won it, I mean, we finished third in the end, I know, but like we weren't far off the top. It's surprising how many games we actually lost that season, albeit in a bigger league. Now to win the league, you can only afford to lose 2 or 3 games a season. That's it.
Yeah.
So it was more competitive, and unfortunately, it has taken the fun out of it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just really, really incredible statistic. It brings back to me what a good side we were. Just one result I was going to mention. We beat them 2-1 in April 1987. A little stat bust and victory there. That was the first time Liverpool had ever lost a game that Ian Rush had scored first in.
Yeah.
So, we ended that run. Trevor Putney and Kevin Drinkle were the scorers that day.
Yep.
And good times. Another good time, Val. Let's stick with the pleasurable memories.
Yep.
April 1994, and a very special occasion that I was honoured or lucky enough to be at. Norwich were guests at one of the biggest parties in football back then. It was Liverpool's final game in front of the famous Cop Terrace. And by a quirk of the fixture list, good old Norwich were playing that day. And I think I said this to you before, that what an occasion to witness in terms of some of the legends that came out on the pitch that day, and the atmosphere and the flags and the noise on the Kop, and just the sense of what a momentous day this was, and almost feeling like you're part of history. It helped that we were safe. They hadn't had a great season, but there was nothing riding on the result for them either. So you could really enjoy the day out. And of course, we beat them, which made it extra special. Jerry Goss got a trademark volley, scored at the Kop end.
Yep.
So
that was it. The final goal in front of the Kop, wasn't it? And it was a cracker. Yeah. Jeremy Goss, he only dealt in quality goals, didn't he? A scorer of great goals, as opposed to a great goal scorer, I think is a phrase. But obviously,
that's a good one.
Obviously, love Jeremy Goss, but he scored some crackers, and that was one of them. It's a really good goal, that one.
Your thoughts on Anfield? Yes, like we touched on it earlier, didn't we? What an iconic ground, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never actually been. My sister has, but I mean, I've always got a soft spot for the old traditional grounds, as opposed to the more modern stadiums, which sometimes lack a bit of soul. I've been to the Tottenham's new ground, as I'm sure you can remember me talking about.
Here it goes.
Yeah. And I've been. To be fair, there's a great stadium, and it has actually. You do feel on top of the players there, which is quite nice. But there's something about the old stadia where you're right on top of it. So fair play. And it's obviously nice to spoil the party.
Yeah. No, I think as a footballing man, you could imagine what that day out would have been like.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, it would have been a real party.
We talked about Jerry Goss's wonderful goal, and obviously we couldn't not mention another brilliant goal that happened against Liverpool. We talked about Justin Fashanu a lot in, I think it was the Stoke episode last season. Yeah, obviously what an iconic, fantastic striker he was back in the day, and he scored an absolute worldie, to use your phrase, against Liverpool in February 1980. It was very rare because it was captured on the TV cameras. I think it was on Match of the Day.
Yeah.
You didn't see much football back in those days, so it was a goal that everyone remembers. I think it was shown the following season as part of the opening credits. Do you remember the goal? We don't remember it, but you've seen it,
Oh
haven't you?
yeah, classic, isn't it? Like flick up on, his one side is on sort of the defender's like left hand side, flicks it up and over his shoulder effectively and volleys it in top bins. I mean,
Yeah,
it's iconic in so many ways, including the celebration.
yeah.
So you don't see many better than that, do you?
You don't. I bet while you were talking about it, playing that goal through your head, weren't you?
Exactly that. There's
Yeah.
almost visualising myself like hitting it myself. Sort of like
Uh,
shutting the defender, flicking it up and hitting it. Fair play to him. I think we lost that game though, didn't we? If I remember rightly.
we did. It was another high score, and I think it was 5-3
Right.
to them. So there's been some incredible games and some incredible moments between ourselves and Liverpool
Yeah.
when you start digging into the history between the two clubs. Final thoughts. I've got a couple here. We mentioned Grant Holt saying how much he enjoyed the atmosphere at Anfield, but I bet he enjoyed putting the silence on the place with his bullet header
Yeah.
to equalise.
I remember watching that in the pub, and it was a cracker, wasn't it? It was Anthony
Yeah,
Pilkington cold one in, like quite a long cross, wasn't it? From quite deep. It was a
yeah,
lovely ball in actually. Drew the keeper out. Was it Rayner in goal? I can't remember, but it drew the keeper out. He was beaten in the air by Grant Holt, who rose like a salmon and bullet header. It was
yeah.
brilliant.
It was a great goal, wasn't it?
Yep.
I like those type of goals. Perfect cross swinging in, just caught it perfectly, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. A trademark Grant Holt goal, wasn't it? It's just what he was all about. Just strong in the air, his physicality, his power, I'd never say die attitude. It was just classic Grant Holt and a good quality goal as well, And one of our
Yeah.
rare moments of joy against Liverpool, even though that wasn't even a win, was it?
No, but it wasn't a defeat
It was a
either.
draw, yeah, and it is since that 1994 win at Anfield we've only managed to get 2 points off Liverpool since then, haven't we? So, and that was one of those two precious points.
Yeah. I think the other one was a Russ Martin
Yeah,
equaliser,
exactly that.
wasn't it?
That was just after he had a
Yeah.
baby, wasn't it? And I think he didn't even travel down with the team, did he? He got a lift down on
Yeah.
with Michael and Delia.
And then the final one, Ryan Jarvis rocket in 2005 to really make his name on the big stage. And I think at the time everyone felt that he was going to be the next big thing, and it never happened for him. I don't know what your sort of thoughts were, if you can remember Ryan Jarvis.
Yeah, you're correct on both counts, really. From my point of view, I thought it was going to be the next big thing, and never really happened. I remember the goal well. It's a really good quality goal, wasn't it? I think it was a consolation. I think,
Yeah.
it was obviously ended up being a consolation, but I think we were 2-0 down at the time, and it was quite late on in the game.
Yeah, you're right.
But lovely kind of curling effort. It was a beautiful goal. But never really kicked on for him. A guy I've seen play a couple of times since, both him and his brother at Lowestoft, where quite a few Norwich players didn't quite make the grade end up. Yeah, you thought he was going to be the one, didn't he? And then it didn't happen. And then Rossi came along, thought, Rossi's going to be the one. And I think got a few starts on the Lambert Rossi Jarvis, I remember rightly, but don't quote me on that. And then never really happened for either of them, unfortunately.
But I think Ryan Jarvis, he's supposed to be like very skillful, like a tricky player, wasn't he? Like really rated in terms of his technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just strange whether he. I mean, that would have been in the relegation season. Obviously, we've said this before.
Yeah.
It's not a great time to come in if you're that type of player, is it?
No. And that's it. That was the season. Obviously, yeah, the Fulham season, wasn't it? I remember that game. Actually, we got a half-assed penalty appeal as well. I mean, it's one of those ones which probably would be given now on VAR. It bounced up and hit the defender's arm. I mean, I personally felt at the time I wouldn't have given it. I'd been disappointed if it was given against us, put it that way. But it's fine margins, isn't it? We've talked about before, but it is hard. I mean, we've got obviously Adam Ida's going to face the same challenges this season, trying to break into a team in the Premier League who are going to be under pressure. It's about how much faith the manager gives you. It's tough and.
Exactly.
Yeah, obviously Ryan found that out, and fine margins. Another season. Maybe if we'd stayed in the Championship, he'd got a few more games and could have gone on to have a decent Championship, sort of like lower Premier League career. You just don't know.
Exactly, and there'll be more Ryan Jarvises in the future, won't there?
Exactly.
You can guarantee
in
that.
The same way there'll be more Todd Cantwells and everyone in between.
Yeah.
So fine margins didn't quite work out for him.
So that's it. And just one last thing to go. The famous score predictions are back. You beat me last time, Phil.
Well, I don't like to brag about it.
Defending your title. We made a slight tweak because it was flawed.
Yeah.
Basically, the scoring system last time, in that you didn't really get anything if you predicted a 1-0 win correctly.
No.
Because we were only going for 1 point per goal.
Yeah.
So we've upped the ante this time, so it's 2 points per goal. So therefore, if you predict a 3-2 win, you'll get 10 points. So a 1-0 win would at least earn you 2 points this time round. So that's better than a correct result, which is just the 1 point.
Okey-doke.
And then we've gone for a flat 5 for the 0-0. I hope we haven't put too many formulas in here and overcomplicated
Yeah.
No. But don't worry, I'll keep you up to date with as we get through these episodes.
Okey-doke.
Now, I know what our predictions are from last time round.
Yeah.
Are you going to change? We both went for 2-0 Liverpool. Is there anything that's happened over the last week that's made you want to amend that?
Was it 2-0, was it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was feeling particularly pessimistic last week. Yeah, I'm now looking back thinking maybe 3-0, but no, I'm going to stick with a 2-0. I think we'll have a good go at them. I think that's just have too much for us, particularly as we're probably not going to have a finalised squad by then. Obviously, transfer window will still be open for a couple of weeks. And also, we've got a few problems with Rona floating around the squad, so it's just disrupting our pre-season routine. But having said that, Liverpool have obviously got a few players probably coming back from the Euros in their squad, so that may also affect their thing. So I think 2-0. I think that's fair enough. I'll stick with that.
Yeah. But like you say, it's a free hit, isn't it?
Exactly, and it's at home, which is crucial because it will be in front of the fans, and it's going to be noisy. It's going to be the first league game back, it'll be the first game I've been to since I think it was Leicester at home where we won, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's going to be our first home game. It's going to be most people's first league game back. So it's going to be loud. It's going to be buoyant. And it's going to be as much as anything about how the Norwich boys deal with that. And if you deal with it well, we've got a good shout.
Yeah, and likewise, I'll be there as well, Val.
Looking forward to it.
So we can do our normal pre-match routine, get that back up and running.
Is that stick me in an away shirt and chuck me in the pub and see what happens?
It'll be fantastic to be back up at Carrow Road.
Looking forward to it, mate. Cannot get there soon enough. And it's funny because I was talking to on my other half about it. It's talking about it's that buzz you get when you first walk out. And I've obviously been going to the football since I was a kid, and I've even been a season ticket holder now for since the League One season when I stopped playing sport. But you still get a little buzz when you walk out onto the terrace and you see the pitch in front of you, see the crowd, atmosphere building. You get that little buzz, and I can't wait for it.
And that'll be extra special this time around.
This is exactly it. It's going to be extra special, and I'm looking forward to it, despite my pessimism.
Excellent. Well, I guess, I'll see you soon, Phil. Thank you very much for your contributions as normal.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.
For talking Liverpool again. And we'll be back soon for episode 2.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
Okay. Cheers. Phil. Bye.